Jake Morrison walked through the long silver hallways of the Galactic Council space station. His simple black suit looked plain next to the fancy robes and strange armor that all the alien diplomats wore. He had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, but he still felt out of place among these ancient civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The emergency meeting call had come without warning. Jake's assistant, a young woman named Kelly Brooks back on Earth, had woken him up at 3 in the morning with the urgent message. All council members were required to attend immediately. No exceptions. No delays. Now Jake stood at the entrance to the great chamber, watching hundreds of alien beings file in through various doorways. Some walked on legs like humans. Others floated through the air. A few crawled along the walls with dozens of tiny arms. The diversity never stopped amazing him. Even after all this time, the chamber itself was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see it. Thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles surrounded a central platform where a massive hologram projector waited. Each seat was designed for a different type of alien body, from the tiny fairy-like sprites to the huge rock creatures from the granite worlds. Jake found his assigned seat in the newest section, where all the young civilizations sat. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago, making them practically babies compared to some species that had been members for millions of years. The older civilizations got the better seats closer to the center. Earth's section was so far back that Jake needed binoculars to see the speakers clearly. As he settled into his chair, Jake noticed something unusual. The aliens around him seemed nervous, really nervous. The Centauri delegate, a blue-skinned humanoid named Commander Rick Hayes, kept tapping his 6 fingers on his armrest. The representative from New Tokyo, a floating brain in a glass container, called Dr. Sam Taylor, was blinking his one giant eye much faster than normal. "Do you know what this is about?" Jake asked Commander Hayes in the simple trade language that most species used for basic communication. Hayes turned his large black eyes toward Jake. "War," he said quietly. "The biggest war anyone has ever seen. Maybe the last war anyone will ever see." Before Jake could ask what that meant, the lights in the chamber dimmed. A deep sound like a bell mixed with thunder echoed through the space. All conversation stopped immediately. Even the species that communicated through color changes or chemical smells went completely still. The central platform began to glow. A figure materialized in the light, tall and made of what looked like living crystal. This was Council Speaker Zethkara, leader of the Vorthan Empire. Her people had been exploring space since before Earth's sun was born. When she spoke, everyone listened. Members of the Galactic Council, her voice came through the translation devices that everyone wore. "We face the greatest crisis in our recorded history. 2 of the most powerful civilizations in our galaxy have declared total war against each other. The hegemony of Skarn and the Nethys Collective will not stop until one side is completely destroyed." The hologram above the platform activated. Jake gasped as he saw the star map appear. 2 massive fleets, each containing thousands of ships, were moving toward each other from opposite sides of the galaxy. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was how big each fleet was. Jake had seen Earth's entire space navy, and it would fit inside just one of those alien ships. "Every member world must choose a side," Zethkara continued. "There will be no neutrality. There will be no hiding. You are either with the hegemony or you are with the collective. If you choose neither, both sides will consider you an enemy." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates started shouting in hundreds of different languages. Some were arguing with each other. Others were making frantic calls to their home worlds. A few were already standing up to leave, probably to start preparing for war. Jake sat quietly and watched the chaos. This was exactly the kind of situation that Earth's government had warned him about. Big galactic powers fighting each other and forcing smaller civilizations to pick sides. Earth's official policy was clear: stay neutral, offer to help make peace, and avoid getting dragged into other people's wars. One by one, delegates began to announce their choices. The Arcturian Federation chose the hegemony. The crystal miners of Vega picked the collective. The trader guild split down the middle, with half going to each side. Every choice made the galaxy a little more divided. Jake noticed that many of the older civilizations were taking a long time to decide. Species that had been around for millions of years were whispering among themselves and looking worried. The Eternal Archive, whose people claimed to remember the birth of the first stars, seemed especially troubled. Their representative, an ancient being called Elder Korthaman, kept staring at the human section with an expression that Jake couldn't read. Finally, Zethkara called for Earth's decision. The entire chamber went quiet as thousands of alien eyes turned toward Jake. He stood up slowly, feeling the weight of his entire planet's future on his shoulders. "The United Earth government has considered the situation carefully," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "We understand that this is a serious conflict that will affect the entire galaxy. However, Earth chooses to remain neutral. We offer our services as mediators to help both sides find a peaceful solution." For a moment, complete silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, laughter began to spread through the alien delegates. Not happy laughter, but the kind of laughter that adults make when a small child says something innocent but foolish. The Arcturian representative, a tall gray being, with large black eyes named Ambassador Veltar, stood up. His voice was gentle but condescending, like a teacher explaining something simple to a slow student. "Young human," Veltar said, "you clearly do not understand the situation. This is not a small border dispute that can be solved with talks and treaties. The Skarn and the Nethys have been enemies for 50 million years. Their hatred runs deeper than the space between galaxies. They will not listen to mediation. They will not accept peace. One side must completely destroy the other, or the war will never end." Other delegates nodded in agreement. The representative from the Silicon Collective, a robot-like being called Unit 7, added his own comment. Furthermore, Unit 7's mechanical voice announced, "Neutrality is not an option. Both the hegemony and the collective have stated that any world not actively supporting them will be treated as an enemy. Your Earth will be attacked by both sides. Your species will be extinct within a standard year." Jake felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his expression calm. "Earth's position remains unchanged. We will not choose sides in this conflict. We believe that all disputes can be resolved through negotiation and compromise." The laughter started again, louder this time. Some delegates were shaking their heads in what Jake assumed was pity. Others were already turning away, apparently dismissing Earth as a lost cause, but Jake noticed something interesting. While most of the younger civilizations were laughing or looking sorry for him, the oldest species in the council were watching him very carefully. Elder Korthaman was leaning forward in his seat, his ancient eyes fixed on Jake with an intensity that made the human diplomat uncomfortable. The speaker called for order, and the chamber slowly quieted down. "The Earth delegation has made their choice," Zethkara announced. "Let it be recorded that they have chosen neutrality, despite the warnings they have received." As the council session continued, delegates began forming alliances and making plans. Trade agreements were canceled. Defense pacts were signed. The galaxy was splitting into two armed camps, preparing for a war that would make all previous conflicts look like small arguments. Jake remained in his seat, taking careful notes and watching everything. He would need to report all of this back to Earth's government. President Carter and the Joint Chiefs would need to know exactly what they were facing. But as the session finally ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something important was happening beneath the surface. The way the oldest species looked at him wasn't just pity or concern. It was something else. Something that looked almost like fear. What could civilizations that had survived for millions of years possibly be afraid of from a young species like humanity? Jake didn't know, but he had the feeling he was going to find out very soon. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense platform orbiting the moon. The massive space station was humanity's most advanced military outpost, equipped with the best weapons and shields that Earth technology could produce. From her command center, she could see the blue marble of Earth spinning slowly below, peaceful and unaware of the danger approaching from the depths of space. Admiral Roy Bennett, the head of Earth's defense forces, stood beside her looking at the main display screen. For the past week, long-range sensors had been picking up strange readings from the outer edge of the solar system. Something big was coming, and it wasn't friendly. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Pete Wilson from the sensor. "Station. We're getting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of Alpha Centauri. Whatever it is, it's huge." Bennett nodded grimly. "Put it on the main screen." The display flickered and showed the blackness of space near Pluto's orbit. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then, like ghosts materializing from a nightmare, massive shapes began to appear. Ships larger than anything humanity had ever built dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took positions around the outer planets. Lisa counted them quickly. 50 capital ships, Admiral. Each one is at least 10 times bigger than our largest battleship. The alien fleet was clearly military. The ships were dark and angular, covered with weapon ports and armor plating. They moved with the precise coordination of a military force that had fought many battles. This was not a diplomatic mission. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Jane Miller. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Bennett ordered. The main screen changed to show an alien face that made several crew members step backward. The creature looked like it was made of metal and flesh welded together. Red eyes glowed in a skull that was partially mechanical. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding machinery mixed with an angry growl. "Primitive humans of the third planet," the alien said. "I am War Master Gorvik of the hegemony of Skarn. You will surrender your world to our protection immediately. Join the hegemony willingly, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your suffering last for generations." Admiral Bennett stepped forward. "This is Admiral Roy Bennett of the Earth Defense Forces. We are a neutral planet and do not wish to participate in your conflict. Please withdraw your forces from our solar system." Gorvik's mechanical laugh sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Neutrality is for the weak and the foolish. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. Join us or be destroyed like all enemies of the hegemony." The transmission ended. On the screen, the Skarn fleet began spreading out through the outer solar system. Some ships moved toward Jupiter, others headed for Saturn. They were clearly preparing for a long siege. "Sir," Lieutenant Wilson called out, "they're starting construction operations around the asteroid belt. It looks like they're building weapons platforms." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. The aliens were not just threatening Earth, they were actually preparing to attack. "Admiral, should we alert the planetary defense grid?" Before Bennett could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the command center. "New contacts," Wilson announced. "Something else is dropping out of hyperspace near Neptune." The main screen shifted to show another fleet materializing in space. These ships looked completely different from the Skarn vessels. Instead of metal and angles, they appeared to be alive. The hulls pulsed like beating hearts, and strange organic growths covered their surfaces like skin and muscle. 60 bioships, Lisa reported. "They're even bigger than the Skarn fleet." A new transmission came through almost immediately. This time, the alien on the screen looked like a being made of pure energy contained inside a transparent shell. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes mixed with the sound of ocean waves. "Humans of Earth," the energy being said. "I am Fleet Commander Sithara of the Nethys Collective. We offer you the chance to join the true path of evolution. Become part of the collective, and your consciousness will live forever among the stars. Refuse, and you will die with the Skarn dogs who dare to pollute this system with their presence." Admiral Bennett tried the same diplomatic approach. "Commander, we are a neutral world. We don't want to join either side in your conflict." "Neutrality is an illusion," Sithara replied. Everything in the universe is either part of the collective or an obstacle to be removed. You have 3 of your days to choose wisely. The transmission ended, and now 2 massive alien fleets faced each other across Earth's solar system. The Skarn controlled the inner asteroid belt while the Nethys had taken positions around the outer gas giants. Earth and its moon sat directly in the middle, like a small animal caught between 2 hunting predators. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the situation unfold from her research. Stationed on Mars as Earth's chief expert on alien biology, she had studied both the Skarn and Nethi civilizations for years. She knew their capabilities, their weapons, and their ruthlessness. Either fleet could easily destroy all life on Earth within hours, but something bothered her about the whole situation. In all her research, she had found strange gaps in the historical records of both civilizations. There were references to ancient conflicts, mentions of something called the sleeping terror that both sides seemed to fear. Every time she tried to research these references, she found that the information had been classified or deleted on Earth. President Andrew Carter held an emergency meeting with world leaders. The message from space was clear: choose a side or be destroyed by both. But humanity's response was just as clear. We will not be bullied into fighting someone else's war, Carter declared during a global broadcast. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We will not bow to threats from alien invaders, no matter how powerful they claim to be. Meanwhile, in space, both alien fleets began to grow impatient. The Skarn started sending small attack ships to probe Earth's defenses. The Nethys began releasing bioweapons into Earth's atmosphere, testing how quickly they could poison the air that humans breathed. But something strange happened. Every attack simply stopped working when it got close to Earth. The Skarn missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible barriers. The Nethys' bioweapons were neutralized by energy fields that appeared from nowhere. Even the aliens' advanced sensors couldn't detect what was protecting the human world. Captain Hayes watched in amazement as Earth's defensive systems activated automatically. Admiral, those aren't our shields. Our technology can't generate barriers that powerful. Admiral Bennett stared at the tactical display showing Earth surrounded by defensive fields that shouldn't exist. Then where are they coming from? Deep in space, automated systems that had been dormant for millions of years were slowly coming online. Ancient satellites hidden in the Kuiper Belt began transmitting activation codes. Weapon platforms buried on asteroids started charging their power cores. Something vast and old was waking up. And it was not happy about the aliens threatening Earth. Back on the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Jake Morrison found himself increasingly isolated. Other species were avoiding contact with Earth's representative as if associating with humans might bring bad luck. But Jake also noticed that the Council's oldest members were watching him with growing concern. During one of the emergency sessions, Elder Korthaman of the Eternal Archive approached Jake privately. The ancient being's voice trembled with something that might have been fear. "Human ambassador," Korthaman said quietly, "tell me truthfully, what do you know of your species' origins?" Jake was confused by the question. "We evolved on Earth over millions of years? Why do you ask?" The elder's ancient eyes studied Jake's face carefully. "Because your genetic markers contain sequences that predate your planet's formation by billions of years. Sequences that match those of the Forerunners." Before Jake could ask what that meant, alarms began ringing throughout the Council station. Emergency broadcasts were coming in from across the galaxy. Ancient installations were powering up in human space. Weapons that had been silent since before recorded history were beginning to wake up, and in the depths of space around Earth, both alien fleets suddenly discovered that their weapons were completely useless against the growing defensive barriers. Worse, their ship systems were being infiltrated by technologies they couldn't understand or counter, the war that was supposed to end quickly with. Earth's destruction had encountered something that neither the Skarn nor the Nethys had expected. Humanity was not as defenseless as they appeared. Something ancient and powerful was protecting them, and it was not pleased with the aliens' threats. As reports flooded in from across human space, one thing became clear. The sleeping terror that both civilizations feared in their ancient records was not a legend. It was real, it was waking up, and it was humanity's inheritance from ancestors they had forgotten they possessed. Dr. Rachel Kim floated in her spacesuit outside the research station orbiting Pluto, staring at something that should not exist. The massive structure buried in the ice of a nearby asteroid was clearly artificial, but it didn't match any known human or alien design. Stranger still were the warning beacons surrounding it, broadcasting messages in languages so old that even the Galactic Council's computers had no record of them. "Director Murphy, you need to get out here right now," Rachel said into her radio. "This thing is huge, and it's still active after who knows how many years." Director Pat Murphy had been studying alien archaeology for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for what his team had discovered. The structure was at least 50 kilometers long and carved from materials that their scanners couldn't identify. Ancient symbols covered its surface, glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "How did our deep space scanners miss something this big?" Murphy asked as he joined Rachel outside the station. "Because it was hiding," Rachel replied, checking her readings again. "The energy signatures only started showing up 3 days ago, right after those alien fleets arrived in our solar system. It's like something woke it up." The research team spent hours cutting through the ice and metal barriers that protected the structure's entrance. When they finally broke through, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with technology that looked both familiar and impossibly advanced. The walls were covered with displays showing star maps, technical diagrams, and streams of data in a language that looked almost like ancient human writing. "Pat, look at this," called Dr. Andy Foster, the team's linguist. "These symbols are definitely related to human languages, but they're older than anything in our historical records. It's like someone took all of Earth's languages and traced them back to a single source." Meanwhile, in space around Earth, both alien fleets were discovering that their weapons were completely useless. Every missile, energy beam, and bioweapon they fired was stopped by barriers that appeared from nowhere. The defensive shields surrounding Earth were stronger than anything either civilization had ever encountered. Admiral Bennett stood in the command center of the Earth defense platform, watching tactical displays that showed his planet surrounded by protective energy fields. "Those definitely aren't our shields," he told Captain Hayes. "Our best defensive technology couldn't stop a single one of those alien weapons, let alone entire fleets." Captain Hayes was studying the energy readings from the mysterious barriers. "Sir, the power source for these shields isn't coming from Earth or any of our installations. The energy is being transmitted from somewhere in the outer solar system, on Mars." Dr. Elena Rodriguez was comparing the defensive systems protecting Earth with references she had found in ancient alien databases. The more she studied, the more worried she became. Both the Skarn and Nethi civilizations had legends about an ancient war, a conflict so terrible that it had nearly destroyed the entire galaxy. According to these stories, the war had ended when a mysterious species called the Forerunners had simply vanished, taking their incredible technology with them. "But what if they didn't vanish?" Elena muttered to herself as she worked. "What if they just went to sleep?" Back on Pluto, Dr. Kim and her team had managed to access the alien structure's central database. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. The database contained detailed records of human genetic development, but the timeline was all wrong. According to these files, humans had existed billions of years before Earth was even formed. "This can't be right," Murphy said, staring at the genetic charts displayed on the alien screens. "These records show human DNA patterns that predate our solar system by eons." Rachel was studying another section of the database that showed star maps of the entire galaxy. "Pat, look at this. These maps show human colonies on thousands of worlds, but they're dated from long before we ever developed space travel." "How is that possible?" The answer came from a section of the database labeled Emergency Protocols in the ancient language. As the translation programs worked to decode the files, a terrifying picture began to emerge. Humanity was not what they appeared to be. They were the descendants of an ancient civilization that had once ruled the galaxy with technology so advanced that it seemed like magic to current species. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency sessions were running continuously. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were trying to understand what was happening in human space. The reports coming in defied explanation. Ancient installations were powering up throughout the solar system. Weapon platforms the size of small moons were emerging from planets where they had been hidden for millions of years. Ambassador Jake Morrison found himself at the center of a growing storm of fear and confusion. Other delegates were avoiding him, as if being near Earth's representative might somehow bring the mysterious human defenses down on their own worlds. But the oldest members of the council were watching him with expressions that looked more like terror than curiosity. Elder Korthaman of the Eternal Archive finally decided to share what his people had long suspected. "Human," he said, approaching Jake during a break in the sessions. "Your species carries genetic markers that we have seen before in the deepest archaeological records of our civilization." "What kind of markers?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "The markers of the Forerunners," Korthaman replied, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. "The species that ruled this galaxy before any of us existed. The ones who built weapons that could destroy star systems and create life itself." The council chamber erupted in chaos when Korthaman made his revelation public. Delegates who had been laughing at humanity's choice of neutrality were now backing away from Jake as if he carried a deadly disease. The possibility that humans were connected to the legendary Forerunners explained everything that was happening in Earth's solar system. On Pluto, Dr. Kim had found the final piece of the puzzle. The database contained activation protocols that were being triggered by the presence of hostile alien forces in human space. These protocols were designed to awaken defensive systems that had been dormant since the Forerunners had chosen to abandon their advanced technology and live simple lives on a small blue planet they called Earth. "They weren't conquered or destroyed," Rachel said, reading the ancient files with growing amazement. "They chose to forget who they were. They wanted to live normal lives, to experience what it was like to be a young species learning about the universe. But the Forerunners had also been practical. They knew that the galaxy was a dangerous place, full of species that would eventually threaten their descendants. So they had built safeguards, automated systems that would activate if humanity ever faced extinction." General Steve Carson stood in the Pentagon's deepest bunker, watching reports flood in from across human space. Ancient weapons platforms were emerging from Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other locations. Installation after installation was coming online, each one more powerful than Earth's entire military combined. "Sir," reported Colonel Amy Davis, "we're receiving activation codes. They're being transmitted directly into the minds of our military personnel. It's like these systems recognize us as their rightful operators." In space, both alien fleets were beginning to panic. Their most advanced weapons couldn't even scratch Earth's defenses, and now massive structures were appearing throughout the solar system. The Scar Warmaster Gorvik found his flagship's computers being invaded by programs that rewrote his ship's basic functions. Fleet Commander Sithara watched in horror as her bioships began turning against each other, controlled by signals they couldn't block or understand. Lieutenant Commander Dan Wright, aboard a space station near Saturn, watched Titan's surface split open like a giant egg. What emerged was a construct the size of a small moon, covered with weapons that made the alien fleets look like toys. Similar awakenings were happening on moons and asteroids throughout the solar system. "Command," Wright reported, "whatever these things are, they're scanning both alien fleets. I think they're preparing to target enemy ships." President Carter addressed the world from the Oval Office, though his words were being broadcast across the galaxy. "We didn't ask for this war," he said simply. "We offered to mediate, to find peace between your civilizations. But since you brought violence to our home. You're about to discover why the galaxy chose to remain quiet about our true nature. The ancient protocols were fully active now. Humanity's sleeping guardians had awakened, and they were not pleased with the aliens who had threatened their descendants. The galaxy was about to learn why the Forerunners had been the most feared and respected civilization in galactic history. And in the depths of space, weapons that had slept for millions of years were powering up, ready to remind the universe that some species should never be threatened, no matter how young and helpless they might appear. The revelation spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Humanity, the species that everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers, were the descendants of the Forerunners, the legendary civilization that had ruled the galaxy with technology so advanced it seemed like magic was not extinct. They had simply chosen to forget who they were and live simple lives on a small blue world at the edge of nowhere. General Steve Carson stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by displays showing the most incredible military awakening in galactic history. Ancient installations were powering up across human space, emerging from planets and moons where they had slept for millions of years. Each one was more powerful than anything the current galaxy had ever seen. "Sir, we have confirmation from Mars," reported Colonel Amy Davis, her voice filled with awe. "The Olympus Mons installation is fully operational. It's scanning both alien fleets and cataloging their weapon systems. According to the readouts, it could destroy either entire fleet in less than 10 minutes. Similar reports were coming in from across the solar system. Europa had revealed a massive underwater complex that was generating energy shields around Earth. Titan's surface had opened like a flower, exposing weapons platforms that dwarfed the largest alien battleships. Even Earth's moon was showing signs of ancient technology hidden beneath its familiar gray surface, but the most amazing thing was how naturally human personnel were interfacing with these systems. Military officers who had never seen this technology before were operating controls as if they had been trained for years. Scientists were reading displays in languages they had never learned. It was as if the knowledge was flowing directly into their minds from some deep genetic memory. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth defense platform, watching her tactical displays show defensive grids that shouldn't exist. "The systems are responding to us," she told Admiral Bennett. "It's like they recognize us as their rightful operators." In space, both alien fleets were discovering that their situation had gone from bad to impossible. The Skarn War Master Gorvek found his flagship's computers being rewritten by programs that appeared from nowhere. His weapon systems shut down one by one, replaced by protocols that turned his own guns against his fleet. Worse, his crew was receiving mental transmissions in perfect Skarn language, telling them exactly why their invasion was doomed to fail. "These humans are not what they appear," the voice in Gorvik's head explained calmly. "They are the children of those who built this galaxy's first civilizations. You have made the mistake of threatening beings whose ancestors could create and destroy star systems at will." Fleet Commander Sithara of the Nethys Collective was facing similar problems. Her bioships, designed to be immune to technological interference, were being controlled by signals that bypassed their organic defenses entirely. The ancient systems surrounding Earth were communicating directly with the living computers that ran her vessels, convincing them that the collective fleet was a threat that needed to be neutralized. "This is impossible," Sithara transmitted to her remaining ship commanders. "Nothing should be able to override our bio-neural networks. These defenses are using technologies that predate our entire civilization." On the research station orbiting Pluto, Dr. Rachel Kim and Director Pat Murphy had gained access to deeper levels of the Forerunner database. The information they were discovering painted a picture of humanity's true history that was both wonderful and terrifying. "The Forerunners didn't disappear because they were defeated," Rachel explained to the research team. "They left because they were tired of being gods. They had technology that could control the evolution of entire species, create planets, and manipulate the basic forces of the universe. but they wanted to experience what it was like to be normal, to grow and learn and discover things for the first time. Dr. Andy Foster was translating sections of the database that explained the sleeping protocols. So they came to Earth and used genetic modification to make themselves into primitive humans. They buried their technology and went to sleep, living as simple hunter-gatherers while their automated systems watched over them, but the Forerunners had also been practical. They knew that the galaxy was full of aggressive species that would eventually discover and threaten their descendants. The protocols they had established were designed to activate if humanity ever faced extinction, giving their children access to technologies that would ensure their survival, Lieutenant Commander Dongwright watched from his station near Saturn as more and more ancient installations came online. "It's like the entire solar system is one giant fortress," he reported to Earth Command. "Every planet, every major moon, every large asteroid has some kind of defensive system hidden on it. How did we never notice any of this?" The answer came. From the database on Pluto, the Forerunner installations had been designed to remain completely invisible until activated. They existed in a state of temporal suspension, neither fully in the present nor completely in the past. Only when humanity faced a genuine threat to their existence would the ancient Guardians reveal themselves. On the Galactic Council station, panic was spreading through the assembled delegates. The implications of humanity's true nature were becoming clear to everyone. If humans were the descendants of the Forerunners, then they had access to technologies that could reshape the galaxy itself. Ambassador Jake Morrison found himself at the center of a growing storm of fear and desperation. Delegates who had been condescending to him just days before were now approaching with offers of alliance, tribute, and submission. The representative from the trader guilds actually got down on his knees and begged Earth not to destroy his civilization for their past rudeness. "Please understand," the trader delegate pleaded. "We meant no disrespect. We simply did not know who you truly were. The guilds offer complete submission to Earth's authority. We will serve however you command." But Jake was as surprised by these revelations as anyone else. "I didn't know any of this either," he tried to explain. "As far as I was aware, we were just humans from Earth. We never claimed to be descendants of the Forerunners." Elder Korthaman of the Eternal Archive spoke to the assembled council with a voice that trembled with ancient memory. "My people have kept records since the first stars formed. We remember the time when the Forerunners ruled this galaxy with wisdom and terrible power. When they vanished, we thought they had transcended to another plane of existence. We never imagined they had simply chosen to become mortal and forget their divine nature." The Elder's words carried across the galaxy. Through emergency broadcasts, civilizations that had been preparing for war were suddenly reconsidering their positions. The conflict between the Skarn and Nethys seemed insignificant compared to the possibility of angering the descendants of the galaxy's former rulers. In Earth's solar system, the ancient weapons were fully operational but had not fired a single shot. Instead, they were simply scanning both alien fleets, cataloging their capabilities, and transmitting warnings that grew more specific and threatening with each passing hour. President Carter received reports from military commanders around the world. "The installations are waiting for orders," General Carson informed him. "They have the power to destroy both fleets instantly, but they won't act without human authorization. It's like they're asking permission to defend us. What are our options?" Carter asked. "According to the readouts from the Forerunner systems, we can disable both fleets without destroying them, send them home with a warning, or eliminate them completely," Carson replied. "The technology exists to do any of those things with the press of a button, but humanity faced a choice that would define their future in the galaxy. They could use their inherited power to become the rulers their ancestors had been forcing other species to submit through fear and superior technology. Or they could choose the path their ancestors had abandoned, using their strength to protect rather than dominate. As reports continued to flow in from across human space, one thing became clear to everyone watching. The sleeping giants had awakened, and they were waiting to see what kind of people their descendants had become. The galaxy held its breath, wondering whether humanity would choose to become gods or remain the peaceful species that had offered to mediate a war they never wanted to fight. The ancient guardians were ready to act, but the choice of how to use their power belonged to the humans who had inherited both their technology and their responsibility to use it wisely. The war between the hegemony of Skarn and the Nethys Collective ended not with victory for either side, but with their complete and total withdrawal from human space. Both massive fleets, which had arrived with enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, retreated to the edges of the galaxy like frightened children running from an angry parent. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council one final time, but everything had changed. The great chamber that had once been filled with condescending laughter when he spoke of peace was now dead silent. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in their seats like students waiting for their teacher to speak. Where once they had dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater, now they hung on every word from humanity's representative. The position of Earth remains the same as it has always been, Jake announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We seek peace, cooperation, and mutual benefit for all species in the galaxy. We have no desire to rule over others or force our will upon unwilling civilizations. The relief in the chamber was almost visible. Delegates who had been preparing for humanity to announce their dominion over the galaxy instead heard the same message of peace that Earth had always offered. But now, when humans spoke of peace, everyone listened very carefully. However, Jake continued, let this be perfectly clear to all present. Humanity will not be threatened, bullied, or forced into conflicts we did not choose. Any species that brings violence to our worlds will discover why the galaxy remained quiet about our true nature for so long. The Council voted unanimously to grant Earth special status as a neutral mediator world. The decision was made not out of respect for human wisdom, though that played a part, but out of sheer terror of what might happen if they refused. Every delegate in the chamber had seen the reports from Earth's solar system. They knew that humanity now had access to weapons that could sterilize entire sectors of the galaxy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now appointed as Earth's first director of galactic relations, worked with teams of scientists to understand their inherited technology. The weapon platforms that had awakened throughout human space were slowly powering down, but they did not disappear. Instead, they went into what the ancient systems called Guardian mode, ready to emerge again if humanity ever faced another existential threat. The most remarkable thing, Elena explained to President Carter during a briefing, is that the Forerunner systems never fired a single shot. They ended the invasion through pure deterrence. Both alien fleets retreated because they realized that fighting us would mean their complete destruction. Captain Lisa Hayes, now promoted to Admiral, in recognition of her role during the crisis, oversaw the gradual return to normal operations in Earth's solar system. The mysterious defensive barriers around Earth slowly faded as the alien fleets withdrew, but the knowledge that they could be reactivated at any time remained. It's strange, she told Admiral Bennett as they watched the last Skarn ships disappear into hyperspace. We have the most powerful military force in galactic history, but we won our greatest victory without firing a single shot. On Mars, Dr. Rachel Kim and Director Pat Murphy continued studying the Forerunner database they had discovered on Pluto. The ancient records contain millions of years of galactic history, including detailed information about every major civilization that had ever existed. But more importantly, they contained the accumulated wisdom of a species that had chosen to give up godlike power in favor of a simple, mortal existence. They left us more than just weapons, Rachel explained to the research team. They left us a guide for how to use power responsibly. Every protocol, every system they built was designed not to conquer, but to protect. They wanted their descendants to be guardians, not rulers. The transformation of humanity's status in the galaxy was immediate and dramatic. Trade offers poured in from civilizations that had previously ignored Earth. Scientific exchange programs were proposed by species that had once considered humans too primitive to bother with. Military alliances were offered by governments that desperately wanted to be on humanity's good side, but perhaps the most significant change was in how conflicts were resolved throughout the galaxy. When the Skarn and Nethys resumed their ancient war, it was on a much smaller scale and far from human space. Other emerging conflicts were quickly brought to Earth for mediation, with both sides eager to avoid the possibility of awakening humanity's sleeping guardians. Professor Sam Miller, working from the new Galactic Studies Institute on Luna, documented the cultural impact of the revelation. Overnight, humanity went from being ignored newcomers to the species everyone watches nervously, he wrote in his first report. But the remarkable thing is that we're essentially the same people we were before. We still prefer negotiation to violence, cooperation to domination. The difference is that now, when we speak of peace, the galaxy listens. The Skarn War Master Gorvik returned to his homeworld in disgrace, his fleet battered not by weapons but by the humiliation of retreat. In his final report to the hegemony leadership, he wrote words that would become famous throughout Skarn history. The humans offered us peace, and we brought them war. We discovered that their mercy is more terrible than their wrath, for now we must live knowing that they could have destroyed us but chose not to. Fleet Commander Sithara of the Nethys Collective faced a similar reception when she returned home. The Collective's governing minds, beings of pure energy who had existed for millions of years, listened to her report in stunned silence. The descendants of the Forerunners walk among us, she concluded. They have chosen to be gardeners rather than gods, but we have been reminded that gardeners keep tools for removing weeds. Elder Korthaman of the Eternal Archive made a final entry in the galactic historical records. His ancient fingers, which had recorded the rise and fall of countless civilizations, trembled as he wrote, "The children have remembered who they are. The galaxy will be safer for it, provided they choose to remain the peaceful species their ancestors became. But we have all been reminded that even the gentlest gardener keeps sharp tools in their shed." In the end, the most powerful military awakening in galactic history achieved its greatest victory through the choice not to use that power. Humanity's reputation as mediators grew not despite their hidden strength, but because of their decision to use that strength only as a last resort. The phrase that had once been a declaration of war became a whispered plea throughout the galaxy, "Leave Earth out of this war." But now it was spoken not because humans were weak, but because they had proven that true power lay in the wisdom to use force only when absolutely necessary. President Carter addressed the world one final time as the crisis ended. "We have learned that our ancestors were once the rulers of this galaxy," he said simply. "They chose to give up that power to live as explorers and learners instead of conquerors. Today we make the same choice. We will use our strength to protect the innocent and keep the peace, but we will never use it to dominate others." And in the depths of space, ancient guardians settled back into their long sleep, content in the knowledge that their descendants had chosen wisely. The weapons remained ready, the defenses stayed alert, but they hoped that their services would never be needed again. The galaxy had been reminded that humanity was far more than they appeared, and that reminder alone was enough to keep the peace. The sleeping giants had awakened just long enough to ensure that they could continue sleeping, watched over by descendants who had inherited both incredible power and the wisdom to use it well.